Hi, this is Evan from Digital Team Coach. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about how you can make your work simple. This is the Simple Work Guide, and I'm going to give you 5 steps on how you can make your work simple. Okay, let's step into them. Let's talk about eliminating first. With eliminating, if we think about the workflows that we have, the tools that we use, the people who we work with, often there are too many inputs that are in these workflows or in the way that we go about our tasks and our projects. So elimination is about removing unnecessary inputs. Think less is more. Think about everything being in the one place. So an example of this. If you, for example, are using a whole lot of different tools or lots of different social media channels for communicating, and some of them just aren't being utilized anymore, but we keep trying to pump things out into those platforms or into those systems, then we're throwing more unnecessary effort and steps along the way. And so what can be done is simply to eliminate those steps or those tools or systems that we're not utilizing anymore. Even just the process of removing and eliminating something can psychologically feel like there's one less thing that you need to think about. So how we do this is we need to look for where there is duplication or where there is not much action happening. That's the first one, eliminate. Let's talk about number 2, aggregate. So aggregating is about collecting data or things, files, items, whatever they are, into one place and to be combining these things into one system. It means instead of sharing the message in lots of different ways, being able to share the message once. Again, this is about avoiding duplication. So let's give some examples here. Often there, in workplaces, there can be files, media, things in lots of different locations. There might be an intranet drive, a cloud drive, someone's laptop, someone's computer. In a whole lot of emails, there might be files buried in lots of different places. And so what we want to do, instead of trying to find things in lots of different places, is have the one place where all that data is aggregated. So for example, if it's photos and videos and having a media repository that might be in the cloud, that becomes the central place that everyone goes to for those things. So then we're not wasting time trying to find things in lots of different places. So that's aggregate. Number 3, integrate. Now this shares a bit with aggregating, but there are times when you may have multiple systems that don't necessarily do the same thing, but then there is some data in common that really should be shared. And if they should be shared, then we want them to be integrated so that they are synced together. And that can sometimes be done within the systems directly. Sometimes there's direct integrations already available. And sometimes third-party tools, integration tools such as Zapier or Integrately can be used to sync data together. So let's give an example of that. Is you might have a database or a CRM of clients, of customers, of all the people on your books, but then you might have a mailing list that has similar data. It would have the people's names and email addresses at least, and there might be some other things. Now, you don't want to be copying and pasting data from one place to the other just to try and keep the data the same. There's duplication in there. It takes effort. It's painful. It's ultimately a waste of time. So if you can then set up an integration between those two effectively databases, well, database and a mailing list, then that data will stay in sync together all the time. And it's one less manual thing, which is not a small thing, that you don't need to do anymore. Other examples for integration might be a CRM and a finance tool, or a website and an app, or a database and a website form that might be embedded. So an example there is like if you've got a contact form on your website and people put in their details and that gets sent to you in an email, and you've got someone's details in an email, but then you need to copy and paste them across into your database or your CRM. That's another like 2 steps that shouldn't need to be that way anymore. Yes, you do need to be notified, but there are lots of tools where you can embed the contact form and in your website, and that will when someone submits the form, that goes directly into the database, so they're all set up in there, and you receive a notification as well. So you're saving a whole lot of time and not having to, there can be manual user errors as well when you're copying and pasting things across that shouldn't happen. All right, the fourth one is to automate, and there's some overlap there with the integrate, but it's going to depend on what systems you have and what they have built into them. So if they have some workflow automations already available, you are going to be able to save more time again. Typically what happens with automations is you have a trigger, something that generates an automatic workflow, and then what that action or series of actions are that take place when something's triggered. So an example there is, again, like if you've got a form on your website that people fill in, that hits your database, and then that can trigger a notification email to that person, a notification email to you, and it might set up a few different things or flows that might begin in that within that database system for them to be contacted, and perhaps even multiple follow-ups that can happen. That's a really basic example, but there are so many different ways that you can do that. There's lots of tools available. See what tools you already have and what they're capable of. Take a look at their documentation, take a look at their website, their blogs, or even their user groups, where they talk about perhaps what automations they have built into the systems already. And that's the first step before you go out and look at other whiz-bang tools. Last one is to delegate. And this one is really, really handy, particularly if you manage a lot of team or a lot of work, or you're coordinating lots of things, or you're just really, really overwhelmed with your work. This can also be the tricky one, because then what you're doing is when you're delegating tasks to other people, you want to make sure that they're doing it the right way, they're doing it in a timely way, and that they might take some initiative and innovate, which is really good. But you want to make sure ultimately that they get the work done in a timely manner and really, really well. Hopefully, even better than what you would do yourself. But you don't want to be spending lots of time micromanaging people and having to correct all their mistakes all the time if they're not going to have that ability to either do it really well or be able to learn well. So this one's a little bit trickier, but it's about finding the right people to do the right tasks. Ultimately, you want someone to be doing things that is not in the middle of your genius zone or the most important things that you do. You outsource those things to them, and that will be the thing that they do really, really well, even better than you. So when it works out well, it's going to be a win-win, and that will significantly reduce the time that you're spending on tasks that you really could be getting someone else to do. So eliminate, aggregate, integrate, automate, delegate. Hopefully they're really practical ways to start thinking about how you can make work simple again. Now, before we get into all that, I want to talk about how we can actually get started on your simple work plan. And I've created a little tool here, the IO Simple Scales. It's a really lightweight audit tool that you can use just to begin mapping out what you should be prioritizing and how you can start to make simple work for you. So you've got a few columns. You've got your tasks or your needs, and this could be tasks. It might be issues that you're currently facing, or just where you're spending time, or where there might be some workflow issues, unresolved pressures, things like that. So list out those tasks. In the next column, we are going to give a scale rating out of 10 for your inputs. Now, your input is the energy or the effort that you're putting in. You could measure that in time. You could measure that just in the amount of mental space you're consuming, or even just the level of pain that that's giving you. So rate that out of 10. Then in the next column, we have your outputs. And this then is the value or the importance of the end product that you're producing for the recipient. Now, the recipient could be yourself, it could be your team, it could be your end consumer. And that rating, again, it's out of 10, is just the value of the output. How important is that for the end person? So what's the value of the input? How much is that using? How much? And what's the output? So you'll have your 3 columns, and then this allows you to visualize all the things that are on your plate. And then we can begin to prioritize based on which ones give the most value and also which ones require the most effort. So if we look at a diagram like this, we've got input on the x-axis and you've got output on the y-axis. You want to prioritize the ones that are going to give you the highest value but also require the highest effort at the moment as well. So if we look at those ones, they can be maybe nominate your 3 things that are in that category where you've got a high effort and high value, or high input and high output. So we want to start to focus on these ones. Then you can also begin to think about, out of the 5 steps, eliminate, aggregate, integrate, automate, and delegate, which steps you can begin to think about applying to each of these needs or tasks. And it may also be a combination of these that you can start to think about. So for example, you'll have a particular task, and it might be a combination of eliminating some of the steps and delegating them. So there could be a combination there. So that is how we can, the framework for simple work, and the IO, input output scale tool that you can use to begin to prioritize what that work is and how we can start to make our work simple again. Look, I hope that's really helpful for you. I'd love to hear how this might benefit you. And if you've got any questions, please reach out. We'd love to chat with you. And we love helping our clients make things simpler and give them real purpose and clarity in what they're doing. So thanks for your time. Look forward to speaking to you again soon.